This one is going to be a really cool and an advanced way to take your Power BI reports to the next level. Today, let's talk about SVG based visualizations and how to build them. This is going to be a two-parter. In the first part, we will understand what SVGs really are and how to create a basic visualization in Power BI. In the second part, I'm going to break down this attendance report, the one that you're seeing right in front of you, using various SVG DAX measures. Let me show you the possibilities so that you get excited, and then we'll go and learn the fundamentals. So here, as you can see, I have built all of this using the native Power BI visuals. You can see that I'm not using any custom visuals or anything. Everything is right here. And here we have got a beautiful table that shows us employee cards. Each one is one employee, and a calendar visual that shows what is the attendance of our employees for each day. And this is all interactive, so I can go to a different month, for example February, and then I can see what happened. So for example, on February 6th we have 12% attendance. That's because it's a holiday here. Likewise, all the weekends are in a different color and the attendance percentages are here. Some KPIs as well as individual contributions are here. I can select any one employee to see what happened to them. For example, Barfani, even though February 6th is a holiday, he is on call, so his attendance was 100%. So like I said, all of this is built with SVGs. We are going to go there in the second part. For the first part, we will understand what they really are and how to use them. The surprising thing about this is, while it might sound complicated, it's not at all that difficult. In fact, I didn't even know how to do any of these things until day before yesterday. Day before yesterday, I came across one LinkedIn post about a Tableau dashboard. And I thought, man, this looks good. I need to replicate this in Power BI. So this is the dashboard, salary and work hours by Suen Adeyemo. And they have created something like this. As you can see, I've taken a lot of inspiration from this. For example, the employee cards are similar to how our Power BI report is and the calendar view, but I have given it my own spin and added our own versions of it, etc. So I'm going to go through all of this in the second part. For first part, let's understand how we can actually overcome some of the visualization limitations of Power BI by using the SVG option. So what is SVG? SVG stands for Scalable Vector Graphics. It's a technology for drawing things on the screen. Normally, your browsers use this all the time. So any website that you go to, they would have a little bit of SVG going on behind the scenes. SVG is kind of like a part of the overall web technology. So you have got HTML, JavaScript, CSS, and SVG. All of these play together to create a visual or a page on the screen for us. So to understand SVGs better, it's a good idea to actually create an SVG first and then see how they look behind scenes. So I'm using this Boxy SVG editor. This is a free editor. I think it's not technically free. They will give you like a 2-week trial of this application. So I've signed up for this day before yesterday or yesterday, and you can also sign up. I'll leave a link to this below, and if you want to purchase this, it's not that expensive. I'm actually gonna purchase it eventually once I finish my free trial. So here you can actually create an SVG. So for example, let's draw a rectangle. This is all our SVGs. We draw a rectangle. I have previously configured it to draw a rounded rectangle, but if you get just a regular rectangle, you can double click on it and you can kind of adjust the roundness. So you can see that this is a rectangle. Let's make it like that. And if I just want to have this kind of a rectangle in my Power BI, we can use the SVG to generate this. So once you have drawn this, I'm gonna adjust some of the settings. I'll go into the geometry area here to make sure the width and height are set as per. Otherwise, what happens is you have got a big canvas 500 by 500 and this box is only taking a little bit of space. So let's go here and let's adjust this to 120. That's the size of that box. So let's go with, let's put bigger, 300 by 60. And then I'm gonna kind of move this inside that and adjust everything. So essentially what we have here is, let me just pan this, is an SVG of a rectangle that is sitting in a box of 300 by 60 pixels wide. Now I'm going to file, save. You can see that there is really nothing much here. It's a simple rectangle, and we will get the SVG file in my downloads. Let me open the download folder, that is the SVG, and I'm going to right click and edit this either in Notepad or Notepad++. If you don't see those options, you'll need to add them. I'm just going to use Notepad++, and this is the SVG code. You can see that that is how the code looks like for the rectangle. So essentially you can see that it starts with a header. You don't need to think about these things. These are like standard in any web technologies. And they'll have some angular brackets and things will be written inside. And the key bit is SVG tag. So anything between the SVG tag is actual image. So up until that point, it's all good. The view box and everything is fine. And here we have got X is 5.522, Y is 4.682, width is 287, height is 51, and it is filled with that RGB 216, 216, 216. And it has a stroke of RGB 000, which is black, and RX and RY stands for the roundness, both X and Y coordinates for that, or X and Y sizes for that, radiuses. If I want, for example, I can adjust things here. So because it's code, I can make changes. So instead of 216, I'm going to change this to 40, 60. I don't even know what this color would be, 40, 60, 80. And let's adjust the width from 287. Let's make this 160, and height we are gonna leave this to 50. And I'm gonna save this, that same file, and go back to my downloads folder, and you'll see that that's the file. I can double click on it. If I double click, it's gonna open this SVG in whatever default here is. In my computer, I've set it to be my browser Edge. But it might open in a picture editor, or it might ask you what program do you want to open this. So you can open it in browser as well. So let's just open this, and here is the SVG. You can see that now it is a different rectangle. It is actually taking this dark blue color, and it is only halfway there. So this is really what an SVG is. SVG is an image, but the image is generated by these codes. So for example, here I'm using rect. Well, I'm not using it. The Boxy SVG has actually generated this code for us, and we can see that rect is used to draw these rectangles. I can adjust every little aspect of this. So the 160 can become 180, and these colors can change to like 120. Save, come back here, refresh, and you'll see that it's a different rectangle now. Now you might be thinking, okay, this is all fine. How does this link up to Power BI? Now we are getting there. So once we have this SVG code, we can take that and make it part of our Power BI, because Power BI can render these SVGs on the screen. Because essentially what a Power BI report is, it's nothing but a canvas. The canvas itself is using behind the scenes HTML and web technologies to draw everything. So if I can create that SVG through my code here, then I can ask Power BI to show it to me. So that's what we are going to attempt. I'm going to open a blank report, and in this blank report, let's draw an SVG. We could kind of link it up to some sort of a data. So I'm going to go into one of my recent data sources, the employee attendance data itself. I'm just going to take that. This table has a lot of things, but we are just gonna grab this attendance data. This is how that looks. And I'm just gonna quickly do a transformation on this data because it's not perfect. You can see that there's lots of noise there. And let me just delete all of these steps, and let's delete the first 3 rows because they're kind of garbage, and the actual data begins from row number 4. So remove rows, remove top rows, top 3 rows. Then we take this row and then make it a header, use first row as header. So this is essentially like a big matrix for every date, for every employee. We know whether they're present, they are sick, they are vacation, and blanks are usually weekends or holidays. So because it is in a matrix format, it's kind of helpful to maintain this data, but it is hard to analyze this. So I'm going to unpivot this. I'm gonna select these 3 columns, and then I'm gonna right click and say unpivot other columns. So this date, day of week, holiday will be remaining there, and attribute would be my emp ID, and value would be status, like whether they're there or not. And this is basically it. This kind of tells us what is going on with our employees. I can close and apply, and we will have our employee data here. Let's just quickly take a look at this. You can see that this kind of goes on for about 3000 rows for every employee. Every day combination is here. Now I can come here and I can create some measures. Let's create a measure that says total days. This is nothing but how many rows are there. So this is count rows of attendance data. And then we can create one more measure, total attendance. And this would be calculate of total days, the days on which they are present. So the present would be they are present or they're remote. Those are the 2 options. And of course, they can be on call or on site as well. So we can say status in curly brackets, and then we can use all the status options. So present, remote, on call, or on site. These are the 4 statuses that indicate that the employee is there working. If they are sick or vacation, that means they're away, and if they're blank, that means it's a weekend. It doesn't really matter. So we calculate these 2 values, and we can calculate a third measure, which is attendance percentage. This is technically not the correct one, but we will worry about that later. And this would be nothing but a division of divide my total attendance with the total days, right? So once these measures are there, we can kind of take a look at this attendance percentage. So if I put the attendance percentage there, we will get that as 58%. This is because here to calculate this, we are considering the weekends and holidays also as working days. So if I exclude them, the attendance will be higher. But let's say this is 58. Now, instead of just saying 58, I want to represent this as a rectangle that is 58 pixels wide. But if the attendance changes, it's more for a specific month or a specific employee, then this rectangle should grow. This is really what the SVG thing is. So I hope now the dots are coming in. We'll worry about that in a minute. But now this is there, and I can add some slices. For example, I can slice this by employee ID. All of these are our employees, and I can, for example, select a different employee, and you can see that each of our employees have different attendance percentages naturally. Okay, so we'll take this and then we'll construct our first SVG measure. Let's create a new measure, and then this is basically what we are going to call this as SVG rectangle, right? And here to create this measure, you have to use the code that this SVG has generated and then kind of feed this. So essentially, I'm going to take this. Now notice that this code has a lot of double quotes. What Power BI does is Power BI uses double quotes for strings. So if the code already has a double quote, you need to escape this by adding one more double quote, which is a pain. So here is a handy trick. Once you have this SVG code, you can use your text editor like Notepad or Notepad++, Control H to find replace and replace all the double quotes with single quote directly. So SVG accepts either. A single quote is also fine. This is also a valid format. If I save this and if I go to my Chrome, Edge, you'll refresh and it still works. It doesn't really care whether that's a double quote or single quote, but Power BI cannot have double quotes in there unless they're escaped properly. So now I'm going to copy this and come back here and then say equal to, and then within double quotes, paste this entire code as it is. So that's my SVG rectangle. You'll see that that's coming up nicely. Now it's not enough that we do this. We need to actually prefix this with an extra line. That line is a bit confusing. So I'm just gonna go here and copy that. This is the line. And come here, take out that and put that instead. So you don't need the XML thingy. You need to actually say you are sending data of the image format where it is SVG plus XML, UTF-8 is the encoding that you're using, comma, and then follows this. So the difference between this code and this code is it has this XML version 1.0 encoding UTF-8, whereas here in Power BI, we don't need that. We just say this. Now the SVG rectangle is set up. Let's add this. Right now, this rectangle is a static rectangle. It will always be just 180 by 50 width. But let's just take a look at that first. So to see the rectangle, you need to use a visual that can actually show images. So these are usually your table visuals, your matrix visual, even the new card visual can do that. Unfortunately, I think the new card visuals are having some bugs because they're still in preview feature. So I've not had great success with them, but tables and matrix are great. So I'm going to add a table, and in this table, I'm just going to drop our SVG rectangle. Now, when you do that, initially, this is just going to come up as text value because the measure when we created, we just wrote it and Power BI still thinks it is some text value. So it's just printing whatever that measure is. Now, what you can do is you can select the measure, and using the measure tools data category, you can actually tell Power BI, hey, this is not just any measure. It is actually a measure that should be treated as an image. So go to measure tools data category, expand this out, and then set this to image URL. Boom. Did you see that? We now have a rectangle, right? At this point, you might still be scratching your head and going, impressive, but why? Well, we're getting there now. So now that we have got a way to generate any shape, it could be rectangle, line, triangle, whatever, you could also link this to your data. So instead of saying 57.5, I can size this rectangle based on that number. So here I'm going to go here, and you can see that the width is 180. I can actually change this. So 180 would be 300 is the total width. 180 is the width of my rectangle. So that's about 60%. I can calculate this percentages and all of that. So SVG rectangle, we are now going to declare a variable where ATT PCT is equal to attendance percentage times 100. Because it's a fraction, we just turn this into a number by multiplying that with 100. And where rect width is equal to, actually, you know what, we don't need to do that. We leave that there, and then this one would be 300 times ATT PCT. So basically we take that percentage and multiply directly with 300, so we could get it scaled out of 300, right? And then we want to return a string that begins with all of this. Where the width is, I'm going to take that out and put 2 double quotes, ampersand, ampersand, and in the middle, I'm going to bring the rect width option, right? So the rect width would be whatever that width is. Let's set this, and we will get that rectangle. Now, all of our employees have got 50 and 60 values, so it's a bit tricky, but you can see that it is slightly growing there. Do you see that? It's animating. This is because every employee, this percentage changes, and that will change. You could add more slicers and do whatnot, but there we go. In fact, what I'm going to do is I'm going to select this and turn this into a table, and let's just add attendance percentage to this table. Let's sort this so we can see who has got lowest. Lowest is 50%. So if I select that, that rectangle is 50% of 300, whereas highest is 62. It changes. In fact, you don't have to just use rectangles. If you go back to the boxy, so the rectangle is there, you can also add text. Let's add text here. Let's put the text and then just say 60%. Let's move the text inside. And while you're there, you can do a lot more things here. You can format the text. You can, for example, change the font boldness. You're not even limited to these fonts. You can use any font, and I think they kind of work all right. It might be slow or whatever. You can do some crazy things like adjust the letter spacing and whatnot. But for now, I'm just gonna not mess with these things. Just set this to 0. And let's save this again. Save. Now this file is downloaded. Let's go here into downloads, right click, open with Notepad++. Now we see that not only rect, but there is also a text tag. The text tag is sending the text there. I'm just going to zoom this down, and you can see that 60% is the label. These X and Y coordinates tell where the text should go, and the RGB is the color of the text and whatnot. I can copy this text, Control C. We'll need to remember about these double quotes every time. So I'm going to Control H and replace all these with single quotes, and copy this text tag, Control C. Go back to Power BI and select our SVG rectangle, and let's plug that text tag as well. And where it says 60%, we want to actually have attendance percentage there. Double quote, ampersand, ampersand, and bring in the attendance percentage in the middle. So now that percentage comes in. Of course, it comes in as a fraction, so it kind of looks really clunky. So let's go ahead and adjust these things. I'm gonna create one more variable, var attendance percentage display, and this is equal to format of attendance percentage in 0% formatting, and then change this variable to display variable there. And you can see that the contrast is not so great, so I'm gonna change this to about 200, which would be more white-like, and let's add that. And here you can see that. Now by default, table visuals are sized. Any image you put in the table, they're sized some sort of an aspect ratio. So what I'm gonna do is select this and go into format and search for image. And you can adjust the height and width. Now, the height of our image is 60 pixels and the width is 300 pixels, right? So that it kind of looks proportional to our thing. And now I can select this and I can see that. You don't have to do it like this. In fact, I'm gonna blow your minds right now. Where we got attendance percentage, I'm gonna take that out and put the SVG rectangle there. And we'll get attendance percentage for everybody. I'm gonna adjust the image width for this, 60 pixels and 300 for everybody. And we get nice, beautiful report that uses the SVG. So each row is one SVG, and this is like an overall SVG there. And if you do have some sort of a slicers there, so for example, I'm gonna add a slicer on month. So all the months are there. I think it shows the full year because it's using some inbuilt calendar there, but we only have Jan, Feb, March, April data. And if I select any month, I can see that, and I can apply some sort order on this. I don't know how it is sorting on the numbers, though. I think it is sorting based on how long the text is or whatever. But you can kind of see this working out very beautifully. So this is the crux of that SVG technique. Using this, you can basically generate any kind of things. So you're not really limited to rectangles and texts. There is SVG specification has lots of different shapes and scope for possibilities. You can see that here, even with this kind of like a open source editor that is free to use online, we can make rectangles, ellipses, triangles, and other shapes. Text, you can even path the text, so the text can be like curving around things and whatnot. And you can insert some shapes, emojis and whatnot, everything into this. This is actually such a wide area that people have actually done quite a bit of work in this space. I'm just learning this, but there's already heaps of work in SVG space already. So one space that you may want to check is Kerry Kolosko's website. Kerry Kolosko is one of the Microsoft X MVPs for Power BI, and she has been doing fantastic work in this space where designing custom visuals with Power BI using DNAB, Plotly.js, and SVG. Now, DNAB and Plotly.js are a little bit too much out there for me, but SVG is something that I find easy enough to use and implement with Power BI. So if you click on SVG templates, I'll leave a link for this in the description as well. You can see that she has already given you a lot of useful, ready to implement things. So for example, let's say you like this, if you click on that, the SVG code is already here. You can see that that is the code that she is using to generate that. So you can copy that, you can change all of this to your data model and your measures. So for example, what is the counter value, what is the access range, and everything you can change, and you can adjust the colors and whatnot, and basically that's going to generate. You might get all excited here. There are some limitations with this approach, SVG approach. So the first one being, these do take more time. So obviously a simple number comes up quickly, whereas in order to calculate this SVG, you can see that there is a lot of unnecessary elements and bytes there. And if you have got a very big data model, then this needs to be cranked up for every little thing there. And that can basically add some performance load to your page. So that's the first thing. The second thing is, if you want to get too fancy, this SVG code itself can get too long. Now, Power BI has some very weird limitations with this. I think the limitation is, there is two limits. One is about 32,000 characters limit, and then there is also a 2 million character limit, or 20 million character limit, or some weird thing like that. So you might be thinking, oh, that sounds like a lot, but believe me, when you are writing measures and when you are creating SVGs, 32,000 is nothing but 32 KB of SVG code, which is not a lot. So you can quickly get there. I have actually gotten there with my this one. This is why it kept crashing all day yesterday, and I didn't know what to do. And today morning I had a different idea, and then I was able to implement. So each of these is one SVG cards, and they were actually quite big. You can see that the code is quite long because we also had to get the employee image there. I'll explain that later. So there's a limitation on how much the SVG code you can cram into this, but as long as you stick to some basic shapes like rectangles, circles, and lines and whatnot, you can actually get really far with this and overcome the limitations of visuals there. You can show multiple items and all sorts of things. So really cool possibilities there. So that's that. The third one is, you can see that here, the tooltip. So unless you customize the tooltip is going to be actual SVG code, which is useless. So I wish we could kind of do some alt attribute, but I have not come across anything like that yet. Maybe there's something I'll need to discover, but if you do know that, leave a comment. So the tooltips are another problem. And the fourth thing is, not all visuals can take this. So tables, all right, you can have them in matrix, which I'm gonna Control C and then put this in a new page so we can kind of test this out. So table works, matrix also works, multi-row cards do work sometimes, not all the time. So it's not working here for whatever reason. Some other times it does work. So if multi-row cards not working. A new card visual supposed to work, but won't work. This is because I think the new card visuals are still being cooked, and every month they release. Sometimes they break something, and because this is such a very arcane area of the whole thing, it doesn't really work. So for example, here it is supposed to show that image, but it doesn't. And the solution for this is, technical solution is, you could use the image attribute of the new card visual and image on. And this image would be not image, but image URL, which is the SVG rectangle, but still doesn't work. And whether you do it for like anything or it doesn't really matter, simply because I think the functionality is broken in March 2025 release of Power BI. Probably it gets fixed again, but yeah, new card visuals not working. Obviously bars and line charts, they will not work at all because they're not really meant for this kind of data. So your safest option is to stick with tables and matrix visuals for now, and that should be fine. So that means the places where you can apply this SVG is limited to a few visuals in the native pack. And if you use these ... and actually get more visuals, there is a HTML viewer built in. You can use that, and that can pretty much render anything, SVG or even HTML for that matter. So you could try those things. So there are some limitations, and obviously the best practice and code and pattern sharing can also get a bit more trickier as you implement SVGs in your production environment. But hopefully you found all of this information useful, and this very first SVG example kind of easy enough to embark on this exciting journey. In our next part of this series, I'm going to talk about how I have built this beautiful attendance dashboard using SVGs. So here there are two SVGs at play. One is this employee card visual that works for every employee. It generates a card. And then another is this calendar, which generates this kind of a tile that has the date and then an icon and a percentage of attendance on that day. Everything is interactive. So if I select a different month, all of these things update. So how do we generate that? That will be covered in the next part. But feel free to kind of pause here and think it about yourself and use it with your data already, because I've kind of given you all the clues. And for more clues, you should definitely use the Boxy website. Make your own SVG, download it, open it in Notepad or Notepad++, see the code, and then see what you can customize. Don't forget the double quote thingy though, because you'll need to change them to single quotes to work. And of course, a big hat tip to Kerry for her amazing work and templates that we can kind of use to shortcut and speed up our journey. And of course, this dude here who made this amazing dashboard in Tableau and kind of sparked that journey for me. I'll catch you again. Bye.